it just kind of seems like people are, for the most part, being left to fend for themselves.
I know when I went to the doctor, I started at the urgent care doctor, and I was prescribed basically an anxiety pill and a steroid. That didn't sit right with me, first of all, because I knew it was toxic poisoning. I actually ended up in the hospital, and they thought I was having a stroke because of the symptoms I was having.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio,
Tumwa, Iowa.
Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
At the end of September, there was a chemical plant fire at a plant named BioLab. It does not make bioweapons. It makes pool treatments. But as a result of that chemical fire, there was a massive cloud that spread of chlorine gas and other chemicals that we don't yet fully know about, that has made people sick in the immediate area, but also in the far away area, to the point where people have had to move, including one of the people I'm going to speak to today. Joining me now is Hannah, as well as Christina. You guys live in the nearby area, not right in Conyers, but I believe within 10 or so miles.
Yes, Hannah, I was about 20 miles, I guess, from ground zero, from BioLab. I was about 20 miles.
Mm-hmm. And you guys, even though it happened in Conyers, tell us kind of the immediate, how you found out about it. This spread well beyond Conyers, right into your backyards.
So I'll just go ahead and start off with how I found out about it. I woke up that Sunday morning relatively early, not a normal time for me. It was around 5:30, and I couldn't go back to sleep, so I just got on social media and I started scrolling, and I saw people were posting that BioLab was on fire again. So let me just start off by saying this is their fourth fire. They had one in 2004, 2016, 2020, and now 2024. I've been exposed to all four fires. I am now going back and possibly relating some of the things that I've been through to the first fire in 2004, because I was only maybe like 5 or 6 miles away. At that time, I was actually in high school, which was a very long time ago. But I don't really remember it being as big as it was this time.
Like I said, I lived about 20 miles from ground zero. And then it was probably, because I had heard about it, but I was out working that day. I was out and about running errands. So I was in it, but the chemical cloud kind of came our way. And so by that evening, my eyes were burning. I had all the symptoms. I had a headache. By that evening, I could tell that it was inside the home that I was in. And so that's when I decided to evacuate. I evacuated actually to my daughter's in McDonough, which I thought would be far enough. And actually the chemical plume followed me to McDonough probably the next day. I tried to go back home, I took my sister with me, and we tried to go back, and kind of just assess, like, okay, how bad is this? But she went with me, and she spent the night, but she was like, this is bad. Like, it's burning my eyes, it's my nose, she was having symptoms. And so I was like, I'm just going to have to pack my things and go. Like, my eyes were burning still. And so we just at that point packed up. I packed my cat and we got out. We just had to go.
It sure seems to me like this is like local Wild Wild West, where, it's a small town, but there's not really a lot of enforcement going on. Because one fire, okay. A second fire, you might want to close the plant down until they get their stuff together.
So I just recently saw that this morning, I think I was researching it, that they've now had 18 OSHA violations since 2004. If
18.
you're a company, because my husband has a small business, if you're a company, you want to have 0 OSHA violations. So to have 18 violations within 10 years tells you something right there. Now,
Yeah.
I was a little different. I was affected the day of the fire. I told you, I was made aware via social media. And then I have the police scanner app on my phone. So I went over there and started listening to the chaos, if you want to call it that, that was going on over there. And then we had planned to have, because it was September 29th, end of September, fall starting, right? So we had planned to have a fun-filled family fall Saturday, because that's when all the fall, like the festivals were starting, and we were going to go out and just have fun that day as a family. And when we got word that it was on fire again, we knew, okay, we have to stay inside, because that's basically what you do every time when BioLab's on fire. You just stay inside until they get it under control. Well, then when we realized it was much bigger than what they were saying, and then I immediately was affected. Like I said, I heard that the wind had shifted, but I was like, hopefully it doesn't come this way. But it did, and I went to the gas station to get, which I have a 3-year-old daughter, who was affected 2 days later. When I went to the gas station and I turned the corner, that chemical cloud was in front of me.
Wow.
And I saw the bright orange red color, and I'm like, that's not like the normal color kind of fire that they have.
And were you in town at the time, or you were out of town?
I was 13 miles away.
Okay. So even 13 miles away, what was your immediate symptoms?
I immediately started feeling my my heart rate going like faster. I felt lightheaded, dizzy. I had trouble breathing. Blurred vision. I thought I may have been having because I had asthma as a child, and then they said I outgrew it, and then I've kind of had some lung things going on for a little while, but nothing like too crazy or serious. So then when I got all the way home, this all happened within a time span of like 7 minutes. When I got home, I felt like I was suffocating, and I couldn't even speak. I could mentally process what I needed to say, but I couldn't get it out.
And this image, by the way, just so people know, you sent to me, this is overhead by Stone Mountain, which is, I believe, over a half hour from this plant. So, I mean, look at that. I mean, look at
that picture right there would be like if you were in Atlanta looking down towards Conyers right there. So that's what you can see from Atlanta.
Wow. And that's how far?
Atlanta, give or take, I don't know, 20, 30 miles. Yeah, so all those little bitty white specks, those are each like little, let's say 3,000-pound bags of Super Shock. So if you have a pool, you only use Super Shock when your pool's like almost green. So when you have that much Super Shock in one area and you go to spray water on that, when you put Super Shock in your pool, it dissolves, and it's kind of like a poof, and it kind of goes away and runs through your jets and drains and all that. So when you put water on it in big magnitudes, it's going to continue to produce a gas. So I don't know when, but they finally realized, I think we need to stop doing that and let it just, I guess, kind of do it itself.
Right.
And here we are. We're at December 6th, and I got a video the Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. I got a video from somebody showing where it was still off gassing in there.
It just kind of seems like people are, for the most part, being left to fend for themselves.
They are. Yeah. I know when I went to the doctor, I started at the urgent care doctor, and I was prescribed basically an anxiety pill and a steroid. And that didn't sit right with me, first of all, because I knew it was toxic poisoning. I actually ended up in the hospital, and I thought I was having a stroke because of the symptoms I was having. I was disoriented, eyes burning, just feeling absolutely weak, and I did pass out actually at one point. And so yeah, the doctors didn't really know what to do with that at all.
Wow. And do you have, you know, whatever you want to share, but do you have any previous health issues that are that severe?
I mean, I have a few underlying things, but nothing, no, nothing severe. They did check me. They did an MRI. They thought, well, maybe it was a stroke, so they did the MRI, but they were like, we don't know, go home. We don't know how to treat this, which, you can't blame them because it's not every day that this happens. So yeah, that's my air filter. We changed out the air and the cabin filter. And so thinking that that might make it better because every time I would get in my car, I would get these awful, awful headaches. Um, and so I did those things and it didn't help. And so what I've determined is it's in the HVAC system of my car.
Yeah, that looks like some gunk in there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And like my paint on my car, I think that it's chipping. My tires, I'm just, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And it's got to be concerning for you, but your kids too, because you don't really know what
Well,
they've been exposed to.
well, exactly, exactly.
It just seems like this is kind of like, you know, the citizens are fending for themselves, and they said there was going to be some type of investigation into what happened, but I'm not particularly hearing much about it. I would still like BioLab to release all the chemicals that were in there.
I can't remember exactly what day it was, but there was one day, I think it was on a Thursday, the county basically relinquished their responsibilities from BioLab, or the whole BioLab fire. And then the next day, the county turned around and sued BioLab. And so it's kind of the word that I've heard lately and I've learned is the word playbook. And that it happened the same way in East Palestine. It happened, in Times Beach. Like, it's not like it's a literal, almost like book that they pull out when there's a big disaster, and they're like, we do this for so many days, and then we do this, and then we turn around and sue this person. And it's just, no one has apologized, for one. No one, the only thing they've really said is they're gonna try to fix their mistakes or whatever.
Well, also, I remember I've been covering Flint for almost a decade, and I've had residents say, well, why am I going to move to just be poisoned somewhere else? The water's
Right.
bad. The water's bad in so many other places, and I want to be made whole. They should fix it here. So,
Right.
you know, and it's also, it's becoming concerning. I mean, if you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're kind of SOL right now in America. Also want to ask about the testing that's being done. Are you aware of if the county health department is doing widespread testing? I mean, I know there's independent testing, but are
We don't
they?
know.
Because it's not just the air. You got to, there's farming around here. So
Mhm.
soil could have contamination that then goes into food.
Yep, absolutely.
And in the water.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, we don't know. The numbers that the EPA showed us were nowhere near the numbers that were actually the numbers.
Which is also a common playbook where the EPA and Flint and East Palestine and many other places I've covered, they seem to get very low levels that are under their quote action level, which, to dumb it down for people, their action level is for individual chemicals. So like lead, they have an action level of concern, but you're not dealing with individual chemicals. You're dealing with combustion of, we don't know how many chemicals because they're not releasing all the chemicals that were there. And I'm showing now, you sent me a picture of a dead bird, just so people know. People, could say, well, Jordan, birds die sometimes. I mean, there's been many pictures floating around about dead birds in this area, as well as other There was videos going around after this about, people in the woods saying it's completely quiet, which is not normal for this time of year because animals typically make sounds, but there was
Oh, it was
very,
so weird. It was so eerie. That quiet thing that you're talking about, it was so weird. Because normally you would hear birds chirping, frogs ribbiting, I guess. You would see deer. All we've seen, really, well, now that it's getting cold, we're seeing more deer now. But back when it had first happened, we were seeing wildlife that you wouldn't normally just see on the side of the road. Like, I was on I-20, I had to go to Atlanta for an appointment, and there was a coyote on the interstate. Like, and then a couple, like, not even like 0.1 mile up, there was like it wasn't a hawk, but it was like a bigger bird. And then a little farther up, there was a deer. So, like, you don't normally see that much wildlife dead within that far of a radius.
bottom line is, how many fires is a company allowed to have before they're shut down? I
Right.
mean, you could say to have a business license, particularly if you're an industrial plant, whether it's chemicals or whatever you're manufacturing there, you have to follow regulations. You have to be up to code. Typically, there's inspections. We don't know any information at all about what the regulations are, if they've been following it. If you mentioned the 18 OSHA violations, but what caused the fire? They said it was a sprinkler malfunction. I have a hard time believing that. We don't know what testing they've done. We don't really know. They haven't released all the chemicals. It seems that there's not a lot of government enforcement going on down there of this plant, which then begs the question: what other plants are substandard in Georgia and elsewhere that are also where they're not on fire now, but we don't know down the road.
Right. And it's, there's a lot of hearsay going around, but I've heard the same story more than one time. So when I hear something more than 3 times, I'll repeat it. And the hearsay story is that they were so understaffed. They were hiring people from a staffing agency. And even if they weren't qualified to drive a forklift, they were putting them on 3rd shift because all they needed were people just to be there. I heard they over-ordered because they heard of the dock strike. And when the chemicals came in, the people on 3rd shift didn't know what to do with them.
Well, I can't say that definitively because, of course, I'm not down there talking to people. But I could tell you, this is not just to plug my book, but as I reveal in my book that came out recently on Flint, two weeks before they switched to the Flint River 10 years ago, the water plant was so understaffed, not to mention it barely had functioning equipment, that they moved folks over from the Flint garbage department to the water department. No disrespect, to garbage people, but they're not experts in treating water. Mm-hmm. So that plant was so understaffed that they were basically moving folks off the garbage trucks to work in the water plant. So a lot of these plants, because a lot of cities are broke, are understaffed, or like you were hearing, maybe they're using people that don't know necessarily or don't have the expertise. Hell, when I covered the John Deere strikes, John Deere was using, like white collar workers to drive their forklifts, and there were crashes. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there are people, the whistleblowers that knew about this, that, it could have been prevented. I think that, I just think that people knew, and it could have been prevented. I think it's a lot of corruption going on.
This is 40 minutes from Atlanta, which is a major American city.
Oh, yeah.
So people, Atlanta was seeing it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether Democrats in office or Republicans in office. The flag behind me is not for dramatic effect. We got corporations running the government, folks.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure the left and the right can agree on that for the most part. And, you know, something's got to be done. I'm not saying go out and gun CEOs. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is this is life or death stuff, because you might not die right away, but we're already starting to see in East Palestine people getting cancers. I've interviewed folks in East Palestine, young women getting dementia at 50, suddenly 30-something-year-olds losing their hair, young children, 6, 7, and 8-year-old
Yeah,
girls
that's
are
another thing that I had in the beginning, not so much as now, but I was having a lot of hair loss.
Mhm.
You know, along with a bunch of other things. Fortunately, my daughter hasn't had hair loss, but she has had these episodes where she will just, it's not like a toddler tantrum. It's like, you know, something is wrong. And she will literally just sit in the floor and spin in circles with her feet and just cry. And it's the most god awful cry you've ever heard. And as a mother, there's nothing you can do.
It's very real. I think we just want people to know, like, this is a real thing. It's just because everybody's not experiencing all the symptoms, you know, or seeing the effects of different things. It's a real thing. We went through this, and, you know, we're still, some of us, having symptoms.